Disney CEO Bob Iger and his top executives are furious about a huge mistake they made. What went wrong? First, they tried to change the Snow White story to fit their woke day agenda, but the bigger error was giving Rachel Zegler the lead role. Now, they realize this could spell disaster for Disney, but it's too late to make any meaningful changes. The film will be out in just a few months.
Admit it, Disney. It's time to scrap Snow White and fire Rachel Zegler. No!
Let's be honest. The film's marketing has been anything but subtle, with Zegler leading the charge to destroy everything and promising that Snow White would be more than just your typical princess and would no longer wait for Prince Charming to save her. Rather, she would be a girl boss who saves herself. Clearly woke, right? But this is where the studio's attempt to rework this classic becomes complicated. Disney has essentially eliminated the majority of Snow White's themes and elements. In the original animated film, Snow White was a 13-year-old girl with a bird-like voice and a sweet aura that counterbalanced the rough and tumble dwarves. Then there was the prince, a seemingly impetuous young man who saves Snow White with a single kiss. In this new version, Zegler hinted in interviews that the prince might be completely removed because, in her own words, he is a stalker and the story is progressing without him.
There is a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her.
Yeah.
Weird.
Originally intended to be a cast of diverse characters with unique personalities, the dwarves, who once brought that rustic charm and rough around the edges humor, are now CGI characters lacking the human spark they once had. Yes, this CGI crew simply doesn't pack the same punch, and when you strip away the S, what's left feels like it's live action. The trailer itself, which was released before Wicked, is already dividing audiences. Hollow is merely a manufactured layer that doesn't appeal to fans. Now, as we're talking about CGI, let's not forget about the behind-the-scenes difficulty. In movies like The Little Mermaid, we saw Halle Bailey conversing with mechanical sea monsters or performers posing as fish. How can you act when your co-stars are tennis balls and green screens? Zegler Snow White, who is technically performing live action, may wind up looking as though she is performing in a vacuum, delivering her lines with less chemistry and more flatness, since it is difficult to convey the depth of a real performance when you are essentially acting into a void.
Rachel Zegler doesn't really do the big things like love, kindness, or regret. But when it comes to hate, oh boy. Hate, that's her jam, and she just spread it all over Instagram for the world to see.
The obvious problem is Zegler's own demeanor and remarks. While Disney had hoped to please traditional audiences with a modernized, strong Snow White, they hadn't expected her to take such strong political positions. Zegler wasn't exactly an ambassador of the beloved old Disney spirit because of her social media outbursts directed at Trump's followers, saying they should never know peace. Her apology also felt more like damage control than sincere regret.
Snow White. And I gotta tell you, the movie is already dead on arrival. That's because Hollywood's new evil queen, Rachel Zegler, just cursed 76 million Americans with her heartfelt message. She said, "May you never know peace." And all because you voted for Trump.
Since she ruined the Snow White remake, producers have been avoiding the actress like the plague. She hasn't been involved in any significant projects in the past 2 years, and her reputation is making filmmakers wary of her. The actress has a knack for ruining success, especially billion-dollar companies in her own career. Consider twice. If Disney's intention was to modernize the story, it appears they may have gone too far. What they risk losing is that traditional balance. It's as if employing her comes with a warning label saying this project might crash right now, and her career seems absolutely stalled because of her. The old-school fairy tale charm paired with a moral lesson that audiences loved. Now the new Snow White is a figure of modern empowered feminism that some love and many find hard to stomach, and as much as the studio tries to spin this as a progressive step, fans who cherish the original subtleties and charm might be feeling left out. So, where does this leave us? Well, in a place where Disney is betting big on a modernized Snow White that speaks to today's audiences but alienates those who fondly Remember the old story with a trailer offering only glimpses of the storyline and no promises of a coherent narrative? It's hard not to feel cautious. And when you add Zegler's political rants into the mix, it becomes even trickier for Disney to win back to those skeptical hearts. People are fed up with the barrage of live-action remakes that try to inject modern-day agendas into stories that were never meant to be political. Manifestos, and it's not just Snow White, it's an ongoing trend with Disney's entire strategy. They take an established, beloved story, and instead of keeping the heart of what made it iconic, they layer it with the latest ideology. But what they forget is that these woke narratives meant to come across as progressive and empowering can feel more like a box-ticking exercise than a story with substance. The result, a cinematic hodgepodge that's neither original nor emotionally connecting. If we're looking at the original Snow White, it wasn't just a fairy tale, it was a profound coming-of-age story. Jonathan Pugh, who dives deep into symbolism and storytelling, once said that Snow White represents the journey of young women learning to navigate their world. The dwarves, in all their rough around the edges masculinity, symbolize men who in the end don't measure up to a quality partner. And then the prince, he's not just a love interest, he's the benchmark for what a worthy partner looks like. He's the one who embodies hope and change, showing that true love is more than just admiration. It's earned. What this remake overlooks is that it's not the idea of a prince rescuing a princess that's problematic, it's the type of man being portrayed. The original Snow White teaches a deeper lesson: don't settle for someone who's beneath you or isn't a true match. And when it comes to gender roles, it's not so much that the prince saves Snow White, but that the story champions the idea that women deserve the best and should never accept anything less. Today's feminist takes on the tale where Snow White becomes a fiercely independent warrior, often missing that nuanced storytelling.
Gonna completely flop. And I think you're right, they're abandoning the classic, story framework for this girl bossified version. People are tired of that. People are tired of live action remakes generally. It's tough because every time they do make a new movie that's original, it's kind of following the same woke narratives that are actually unoriginal because they're pre-scripted to follow this woke ideology.
Then there's the irony of Snow White, the girl boss in the new movie, who seemed to be trying too hard, when the original princess had a quiet strength, bravery, and gentleness that shone through her struggles. This change from true empowerment to an exaggerated feminist archetype feels blatantly forced. But it's not just the plot that suffers, it's the filmmaking as well. Snow White isn't meant to be the tough, take no prisoners type. Her strength lies in her compassion, innocence, and capacity to uplift those around her. Walt Disney's original Snow White was not only revolutionary for its plot, but also a monumental feat of animation, made on a $1.5 million budget at the time. It was a labor of love that almost brought Disney to ruin, but ended up being a masterpiece. Today, with budgets in the hundreds of millions and a reliance on cutting-edge computer graphics, we're left with a film that looks shiny but feels lifeless over the course of the film. Walt Disney's Snow White was a well-paced, 1-hour, 23-minute film that was packed with moments that made every second matter. However, the live-action adaptation is currently going to go over 2 hours simply by dragging on with filler that adds nothing but wokeness to the story, and the irony that all that excess comes with a lack of substance. For instance, they have a large budget for the high-tech effects, but what's missing is that human touch, that old spark of creativity that made the original unforgettable. Now, contrast that old classic with what we're seeing in the remake, where the magic has been replaced with a hurried computer-generated imagery show, and the complexity of the characters has been reduced to what can fit into a politically correct agenda. The dwarves have lost their individuality and been replaced with computer-generated images that are little more than eye candy and lack the warmth and humor that made them famous. And Snow White is no longer just a simple young girl attempting to make life beautiful. She has been altered to fit a woke image that values ideology over storytelling.
It's tough because every time they do make a new movie that's original, it's kind of following the same woke narratives that are actually unoriginal because they're pre-scripted to follow this woke ideology. And then anything that they make as a remake, they inject that same ideology into.
Disney's risk on this new Snow White will ultimately backfire because the story isn't just being updated, it's being reimagined in a way that sacrifices what made it great. It may look impressive with its high-budget computer-generated imagery and contemporary themes, but the question still stands. Does it have the heart of the original? Based on reviews and what we've seen so far, the answer may be a resounding no. Please share your thoughts in the comments section below. Also, remember to subscribe for more videos regarding woke Hollywood productions like Snow White. See you in the next one.